Good afternoon. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What would you do if you could change the color of your skin? Would you do it? Come with me on my journey, and hopefully that will add a bit more context to my question. It might be a little surprising to you, but I didn't really think about my skin color when I was younger. My parents didn't really talk to my sister and I much about race or skin color or what blackness is or was. Aren't we cute? We were just a normal family trying to live our lives and be good people in a sometimes not so good world. I mean, obviously, I knew I was Black. I knew about slavery and racism and civil rights movement. I grew up in southeastern North Carolina, so I was well aware. But I also knew that my family and I were treated differently because of the color of our skin. For example, we would go shopping at the local mall and be followed around in stores, stuff like that. But most of my friends and classmates were white, and they would make innocent statements like, "Oh, Tameka, I don't think of you as my Black friend. I think of you as my friend." Or your skin color doesn't matter to me. But little did I know at the time that we were part of a system that was designed to determine who we should be friends with and who we shouldn't be friends with based on the color of our skin. But fortunately, my academic achievement made me an exception to a rule that I didn't even really understand or know anything about. I just always felt a little disconnected from the color of my skin. But now, after being a diversity and inclusion practitioner for almost 15 years, I now better understand that this disconnection is known as a microaggression, a microinvalidation called color blindness. Now, Dr. Daryl Sue, a professor at Columbia University, defines color blindness as an assumption that people are just people, that we're all human, that the only race is the human race. I see some heads nodding. Maybe some folks have said that before. But color blindness negates the lived experience of a person in a colored skin. And I didn't really think I had any lived experiences. I was just normal and regular Tameka. But this connection, you know it was coming, right? This connection and perception to my skin drastically changed in 2018. Now, here's a picture of me on Valentine's Day, 2018. I woke up that morning. I didn't feel really well, but I went to work. But I ended up leaving work early because I began to feel worse as the day went on. So I got on the subway, got off at my stop, stopped at my favorite corner bodega, got some juice and these roses, thinking that they might make me feel a little bit better. Now, fast forward to a few weeks later, and here's another photo of me that was taken in the ICU burn unit at Northwell Medical Center in Staten Island, New York. And no, I wasn't in a fire between Valentine's Day and when this picture was taken. You see, Valentine's Day was the beginning of a rare and severe allergic reaction to some medication that I was taking. And it mimicked burning my skin to levels of second and third degree burns. And y'all, I lost all of my skin. And when I mean all of my skin, I mean every square inch of my skin. From the skin on the scalp of my head to the skin on the bottom of my feet. My entire body, except my face, was wrapped in medicated bandages. It took 3 nurses to pick me up and bathe me for the first 2 weeks of my month-long stay. Now, this medical condition is known as Stevens-Johnson's syndrome. Go ahead, Google it, check it out. But I call this condition hell, as you can imagine. Now, going through this experience was a life-changing moment for me, my reset. And what I learned is that a reset can cause you to rethink redefine, and rebuild yourself. Now, the doctors and nurses couldn't tell me what my skin would look like when it healed, if it healed properly. Of course, I was concerned about being permanently disabled or disfigured. But after a few days, when I began to feel a little bit better, I did begin to wonder what my skin would look like when it returned. Would it be darker than it was before? Would it be lighter? Would I be some kind of weird plaid color? Would I lose the very special parts of myself as my skin fell away? And who would I be in this new skin? Who would this Tameka be? And furthermore, why is this happening to me? Why this weird skin thing of all things? Like, why now? You see, sometimes when we go throughout our lives and we experience challenges or reset, sometimes we press the reset button on our own voluntarily. For example, maybe you're in a loveless marriage or an aimless job, and you decide to leave that situation and start over, a fresh and new beginning. But sometimes the reset button is pressed for you, and you have to restart from where you are. So as I just mentioned, going through this traumatic experience made me realize that a reset has the ability to make you redefine, rethink, and rebuild not only who you are, but all of our lives in a better society going forward. Redefine. As Joni Mitchell says in her famous song, Big Yellow Taxi, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? It was really disturbing when I began to lose the skin from my fingers and my hands and my feet. Now, eventually the skin grew back. It grew back in this weird pink color. And I didn't know what was going on. But what I did know is that you don't really understand how important something is to you until it's gone. And so losing my skin made me appreciate and redefine my coloredness, my Blackness, my meanness. Rethink. Now, when I was in the ICU burn unit, there were only 10 beds, and they were filled the entire time I was there, which was a month, mostly with children, some as young as a few months old. Now, when I began to feel better, I would walk around this circular unit just to get some exercise and to talk to the doctors and nurses. And I would walk by their rooms and see them in their little beds and cribs, and their family and friends were there all day and all night until visiting hours were over around 9 p.m. And I never heard a peep out of any of these babies during the day. But at night, when it was quiet and it was dark, they would wake up screaming, crying out of fear, out of pain, out of exhaustion. And then I would cry because I was afraid. And I was in a lot of pain. And I was so exhausted. You know, you can't get any sleep in hospitals, right? All the blood work. And in those moments, we shared the same fears, the same tears, and the same emotions. And when I think of the collective pain that we experienced in the hospital, I think it's very similar to the collective pain that we all have experienced because of this lovely pandemic, right? Some of us, unfortunately, have experienced loss and pain. We've all been afraid, and aren't we all exhausted because of this quarantine? Now, this reset was forced upon us, not by our choice, right? But we can take this opportunity to rethink the way that we treat each other and embrace our differences going forward. Rebuild. So I finally left the hospital at the end of March 2018. Here's a picture of my awesome sister and I. A few minutes after I left the hospital, I was ready to get the heck up out of there, as you can imagine. By the time I left, as you can see, about 80 to 85% of my skin returned. I lost a lot of my hair because, again, the skin on my scalp was lost. I got to give a shout out to my stylist and friend, Zakiya Ryan, from saving my hair and saving my dignity. I lost my toenails and my fingernails. I even lost the fingerprints on my fingers, and I couldn't use the Touch ID function on my iPhone. So here I am, walking out of the hospital with new skin, with no scars, no embellishes. As I said, my awesome sister came from North Carolina and stayed with me during the whole ordeal. She commuted practically every day from Staten Island to Brooklyn, where I live, and took care of my 2 doggies at the time and my apartment, and she kept my life going while I was in the hospital. But shortly after I returned home, she had to go back home to her life. And so I was left alone to kind of figure all of this out. And what I quickly realized is that I had to rebuild my life from where it was now, not where it was before I went into the hospital. And in essence, I think we all kind of do, right? As we emerge from this pandemic, we have to realize that we can't go back to the way things were before. And great, most importantly, we don't have to. Listen, socioeconomic, racial, health, educational disparities have all been exposed during this pandemic. And we can't unsee what we have seen, and we can't unlearn what we have learned. But what we can do is make more intentional and deliberate decisions going forward to make sure that we rebuild a more inclusive society than it was before. Now, some of us have already done that. Some of us have donated our time and money to organizations that are making differences in our community, especially social justice organizations, which is great because these organizations can create long-lasting change. But if average people like you and I really want to make a long-term impact in a short amount of time, we have to be willing to use our privilege, our power, and our influence in the spaces that we live, work, and play in order to make sure that they're more equitable and inclusive. For example, if you make hiring decisions, make sure you hire diverse teams and make sure that everyone on your team feels like they are welcomed and they belong on your team and in your organization. Expand your professional and personal network beyond your comfort zone and zip codes in order to learn and embrace different perspectives. And speak up. If you witness or experience microaggressions or other biased behaviors, especially against others, each of us, all of us, has to do our part. Listen, we all lost our collective skin because of this pandemic, not by choice, but we can choose to redefine, rethink, and rebuild a better society than it was before. Y'all, let's make this a reset that truly matters. Thank you.